Hi, my name is Holly Amato, and I have Jeffrey Lance Abood, top divorce attorney here in the Southeast Michigan area, whose firm also handles criminal defense and personal injury cases with me today on the Onward and Upward show. We're talking about what happens when you're looking to sell your home or homes during a divorce. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jeff.
Thanks for having me, Holly. Excited to be on and see what exciting topics we get to talk about today.
Absolutely. Okay. So I'm looking forward to getting your perspective on this really important issue people face as they're going through divorce. But before we dive into that, I think the audience would be interested to know that you've also been represented NBA and NFL athletes, which has allowed you to do some substantial travel lately. Obviously, we're a little disappointed that our Lions aren't going to be seeing the Super Bowl this year, but I think we'd love to get your inside perspective on it. And, it's coming up in just a few weeks.
That was devastating last weekend, wasn't it, with the Lions loss?
Such a hurtful thing.
Yeah, I think I went to every single home game this year, and my son absolutely loves it, and so we were going to every game. But this last one, that energy didn't seem the same. Something seemed off, and it was sad. But you know what? The team did great. They've done great the last two seasons, and I think we have a lot to look forward to next year, and it's definitely not same old Lions. But yeah, I do work with a lot of athletes. I represent a lot of professional athletes in various areas of the law. Some of it's family law, some of it's general civil, some of it's criminal defense. Sometimes it's disputes arising out of contracts. But yeah, and that does allow me to travel a lot, which is definitely fun. So.
It has to be fun. It has to keep you busy, especially right now when it's freezing cold here in Michigan. Probably looking to get some more clients out in California or the southern part of Florida, maybe.
Those are always good places to go in the wintertime.
Right?
Absolutely. It seems like last year I had more cases out of state in warmer climates in the summer months. And I actually wasn't too happy about that. I'd rather it be in the winter, but we do what we do. And it's almost like when we're busy working, it's almost like the seasons don't even really phase us or matter. We don't pay too much attention to that. Which is kind of crazy, but it is always nice to get off a plane somewhere warm, especially with the temperatures we're having here this week in Michigan right now, these frigid
It's
temps.
brutal. It's brutal. I totally agree. That's why I'm going to be in Florida too. So obviously, there's a ton of things that need to be addressed in a divorce. And real estate is typically one of the top concerns. So, what would you like people to know or consider that you find maybe they typically don't realize about keeping or selling their homes in a divorce? Or what have you found in that arena?
Well, there's a lot. And when you say one of the top things, real estate is absolutely one of the top things. But usually if you have children, minor children, they're still school age, usually the top concern for most people are their children.
Sure.
And that goes hand in hand with the real estate, with the piece of the real estate that's a primary, or the marital residence, right? The marital home, the home where the children have resided in and potentially grown up in or lived for a substantial period of time. And that usually is the first thing to think about. Obviously, there's other things to consider with the real estate when going through a divorce, but usually that's the primary reason. And a lot of times when people call me in the beginning for a consultation, or even when we first get on a case, and they say, should I sell my house? Should I try to keep the house? Should I give the house to my soon-to-be ex-spouse? What should I do with the house? And almost always my answer is, I don't know, because I don't have enough information yet. And also things change. It's like in Michigan, we have a minimum waiting period of 6 months for a divorce with minor children before it can be finalized from the date of filing. And one of those reasons I believe is because people change their mind and they're not sure what the new normal is going to look like, right? And you might not even know while the divorce is pending. It might be later, but also we don't want people making irrational decisions or quick decisions. There's a lot of emotions with divorce. It's kind of a roller coaster, it goes up and down, right? And, sometimes I tell people right away, don't answer me now. Don't make a decision now. Sleep on it, think about it, live with the situation for a while, consult with maybe, or not consult with, but maybe talk to friends or family that have gone through it that could potentially give you solid advice, and also consult with professionals. And if you want to talk to your therapist or your professional in any way, do that as well. So it's not strictly a business deal when it comes to the marital residence. And part of the reason for that is, well, there's a lot that goes into it, but one situation or one of the potential reasons is, can you afford it or not? Well, we don't really know what your financial situation is going to be like yet, especially in the onset of a divorce. But also back to the emotions, sometimes people are like, you know what? I don't want any memories in this house at all. I'm leaving. Forget about it. I'm going to go get a new place, a fresh start. Sometimes it's, you know what? It's sentimental to me. I got to stay in this house. But what you need to think about too is the children, the established custodial environment. There's a lot of things to think about with that. And people think, though, if they leave a house as soon as a divorce is filed, some people are like, oh, is that considered abandoning the property? And usually it's not. And at least in Michigan, moving out of a house, just simply moving out isn't necessarily abandoning. Now, could the other side get an order for exclusive use of the house? Yes, that's possible. Could they potentially then be able to change the locks? Yes, that's possible. But does that mean you lose your interest, financial interest in the real estate? No, not at all. Does it mean that you can't ever go back there again? No, not necessarily, maybe temporarily. But those are things to consider that are important as well. And the other part of it is, actually, the negative with leaving, and the reason I tell people don't just up and leave the house, like obviously if there's safety concerns or domestic violence, you're worried you're going to be physically harmed or you can't handle it anymore, then it could warrant a reason to move out of the house. But typically, it may be, and again, everybody's situation is different, but it may be smarter to stay in the house until at least you have an interim parenting time agreement. Because if somebody moves out of the house and doesn't take the kids with them, well, if they take the kids with them, the other side's probably immediately filing a motion saying they took the kids, they better bring them back right away.
Right.
Or if somebody leaves the kids at the house and then files a motion or waits to get parenting time, it may take a little longer, and the other side's going to say, oh, well, they voluntarily left, they didn't ask about the kids, anything like that. I usually like to have at least a temporary parenting time order in place, which we call an interim parenting time schedule or interim parenting order, that's going to dictate where the kids are going to be and on what days and that type of stuff. And something to consider too is in every county, or a lot of counties throughout the state are a little bit different about this, but usually it's good to have a separate bedroom for each child, separate bed, good living arrangements for the children or where they're going to be living. And usually it's better to do something permanent rather than temporary, but it's also tough to do something permanent while you're married, or while the divorce is pending, because one, you may not be allowed to, and we can get more into that. And the other reason is you don't know what your finances are going to look. So usually if you could stay put for a while in the house, that may be the smarter thing to do, obviously, unless it's not safe to do so.
Right. So there's a lot to unpack in that. The first thing you said, though, that I wanted to bring up is when you talked about abandonment, because I think that is huge. So many people, I know I got divorced, and back when I got divorced, that was basically what I thought, that you couldn't leave, or that was considered abandonment. You were going to lose the interest in your home. So I like that you just clarified that it's not. I think that's something that's
I'm not saying it's not entirely. It depends on the situation, but in a traditional situation where that's been the family home that was, it doesn't necessarily have to be, but assuming it was acquired during marriage and all of that. And, and this is all absent a prenup too. And I'm not, obviously a prenup could dictate otherwise,
Sure.
Regarding property, not regarding the children. But assuming that, but the reason I don't necessarily like people doing that typically, and again, every situation is different, and make sure everybody consults with their attorney before doing anything, give them all the information, not bits and pieces. But it makes it harder it could create some obstacles or challenges in getting parenting time or interim parenting time quicker than what you would want it.
Okay. And then the other thing that you mentioned, one of the other things is the school. So, and not knowing what your finances are, because I know in my situation, everyone's situation is different. I think, and you can let me know what your thoughts are, because you deal with this every day. The women I talk to seem to, when they come to me, like, thinking of moving, most of them want to try to keep the house. A lot of them, if they have younger kids, because they feel like they want to give them, as much stability as possible. So sometimes they really don't consider that it might not be the best financial decision for them. Like you said, they don't know how much money they're going to get. Can they afford? Do they really know what those bills are and the taxes and all the things? So I find that, like you said, having professionals that can really walk you through all of that, making sure you understand what you're
Yeah,
getting into.
we have them consult with financial professionals, with accountants, financial advisors, experts, and to figure out whether or not it makes sense. And here's the thing too, that something that's been coming up a lot more recently than it has in the past, but assuming that either you're both on the mortgage or the spouse that's leaving the house is on the mortgage, it's not an easy thing to get approved a lot of times, especially if you're the stay-at-home parent,
Right.
in order to be able to assume that mortgage. So sometimes what people do, what they find better is it's better off they're selling it, splitting the proceeds, and each getting their new residence. But something else to consider also is interest rates may be higher now than it was before. So just because your payment may be $3,000 a month, hypothetically, right now on your house, right? And your payment might go up, and you probably know this better than I do in numbers. I'm just throwing a number. It might go up to $5,000 a month. And that's a big jump and a big difference. And so I don't know exactly how much the rates are actually affecting monthly payments. I'm sure it depends on a lot of factors. But that's why it's really, really important to check all of that out. But usually, if one of the two parties want to keep the marital home and they can afford it, usually a judge isn't going to force them to sell it. And obviously people can agree to whatever they want as well too. And unless the judge thinks it's not in the best interest of their minor children, they're usually not going to interfere with it.
Right.
But there's all different ways to do it. And then something else that you talked about is whether to sell or not while going through a divorce, and if they're allowed to or not. Typically, in several divorces, what's done is what's called a preservation of assets order. And whether that's done immediately when somebody files, which is called an ex parte order, or somebody does it upon stipulation, they agree, or a judge orders it upon one person filing a motion, meaning asking the court to do it. And what that is preservation of assets order, which means nobody can buy, sell, borrow, charge, spend, do anything out of the ordinary course of business. It prevents people from depleting 401ks or retirement accounts, or selling property or buying property or racking up credit cards or doing anything out of ordinary course of business. Something I tell people a lot is, listen, if you lease a car every 2 years and your lease is up, lease a car, that's typically fine. But if you usually get a Ford, you can't go get a Ferrari, right?
Yeah.
And so, or if you usually go to Disney 2 or 3 times a year, you could probably continue to do that. But if you usually don't go to Vegas and spend $50,000 in a weekend, you can't do that. So that, and to bring it back to real estate, you can't just decide to sell the house. Now, if you both agree to sell the property and agree with what's going to be done with the proceeds from that property, and reduce that to a court order, then typically, yes, that could be an exception to, or it could be a modification to that preservation of assets order. So it doesn't typically mean then you're stuck in the house, that's it, neither of you could sell it. You can, as long as there's agreement or there's a court order for it. And so that's typically the way it works. And as far as then buying a new place, if you buy a new place while you're married, well, one, the order might prevent you from doing it. And two, what could happen is, say your divorce takes a year to be finalized and the property goes up in value, that it technically could still be marital property because it was bought during the marriage. And the other party could say, hey, that the house you just bought just went up $100,000. You owe me $50,000, typically, or hypothetically. Mm-hmm. And it's not always necessarily the rule or the law, but those arguments, these are all arguments I've seen made. In family law, it's equity, what's fair. And people have made all kinds of arguments. And whether they're successful or not, ultimately is up to the judge, or if they reach a resolution. But that's a risk. Now, I've had plenty of situations where people decided to buy another house while the divorce was pending, and they agreed. They do a court order. They say, okay, the money that's going on down payment on this is going to be an advance on the property settlement to, let's say, its wife. The property settlement to wife, here's an advance. That's coming out of her ultimate share of whatever that share is determined to be. She can have, $100,000 towards the down payment now, and her share or her equitable portion or division of the marital estate would then be reduced by $100,000, for example. And then there would also be a court order that it's her own property and that husband won't make any claims to it, won't be awarded any increase in value, decrease in value. But then you got to go further and say, who's responsible for the payment? how's that payment going to be made? Where's that money coming from? Who's paying the utilities and all of that? And it's also situations where that comes to mind is when somebody's living in a house, and the house may be for sale on the market for a long time. We don't see that too much in today's market, but let's assume it was on the market for a long time. And I do have something like that right now where somebody has a unique home or they're unrealistic about the price or something, and it's on the market for a long time. And one of the two parties are living in the house, maybe with the children, maybe without children, whatever the situation may be. But then who makes the payments? And then are they getting credit for the payments or not? In situations too, which is typically can be messy to keep a property jointly after the divorce is final. But sometimes we'll say, okay, up to 6 months or up to 3 months or up to whatever the period of time is. But then we have to specify who's responsible for making the payments. And then are they going to get credit for it? Sometimes you say you get the person making the actual payments gets credit for the principal reduction only. And sometimes they say, well, no, that's part of the maintenance. And then some situations, actually, the way they're resolved is spousal support and or child support will start after the house is sold. So in the meantime, the parent that typically would have paid support is continuing to pay for the house. And listen, it might be a hybrid. It might be, okay, that's in place of spousal, but we'll still pay child support. In any combination of those, I've seen done and can be done.
Okay.
Until the house is sold.
So the most important thing, though, is getting it in writing. Like you said, like if you're going to go buy a house, make sure that you have it in writing, an order that says that, yes, it's just your house and it's in writing. We had a situation with someone who didn't tell us everything and wasn't far enough along to get something in writing. So had to put the house in someone else's name, like son and girlfriend, and then was able to quit claim it back after because couldn't get her to agree. And we were like,
yeah, but here's the thing with that too, that could come back to bite them in the butt too, and to not be, and it depends on the situation, but usually if somebody buys a property under somebody else's name, then the court could really come back and punish them for that. So listen, the best thing is to be transparent and honest, but to communicate with your lawyer and make sure you tell your lawyer all the facts, not just some. And be honest with your lawyer and make sure that you've, consulted with financial experts and figured out a plan that makes sense. And then your lawyer could try to either draft up a proposed order and see if the other side will stipulate to it, meaning agree to it, and then you submit it to the judge. Or your lawyer may have to file a motion with the court and ask the court to grant that relief in order for you to be able to buy a property. But sometimes, people, if they try to buy a house or give cash to somebody else to buy a house or whatever, that could come back to bite them in the ass pretty hard.
Yeah. We could go into like the home mortgage aspect and all of it, and it's just so intricate. But I think the most important thing people have to understand is, like you've said a few times, and I think it's so important, you have to be honest with your attorney. You have to tell your attorney everything. Like, how many times have we heard, like, if you just would have told me, I could have made this situation a lot better for you.
And you need to be prepared, or at least hire a lawyer that's going to give you realistic advice and have realistic expectations. Because that's, in my opinion, that's one of the most important things. And I try to give all my clients realistic expectations. Some lawyers, unfortunately, will give unrealistic expectations or make their clients think anything is possible. And that's not necessarily the case. So I'd rather under-promise and over-deliver than to over-promise and under-deliver. And obviously, you never know. There's no guarantee at all. We're not allowed to make guarantees.
Right.
But that's what's important is, and listen, be prepared for your lawyer to tell you stuff that you don't want to hear, because there's a lot of things while going through a divorce. And if you have a good, experienced lawyer, they're going to tell you things you don't want to hear. And you got to be prepared for that. And also keep in mind, I know I said consult with friends and family about certain things and how to navigate certain things or talk to them for advice. But at the same time, not everybody's situation is the same. Almost every situation is different. So just because somebody says what happened to them in their divorce case or what they did, it may not be applicable at all to yours, or it may be partly applicable to yours. So it's advice, but based on your own unique situation. No two divorces are the same or have been the same.
And you should be picking your professional because you sit down with them and you have confidence with them. If you don't feel confident, in that person, then don't choose them. But if you do, if you put down there, you put down your retainer, you've gotta trust the person that you are asking to walk you through that.
You need to
There's too
trust them.
many
And here's the thing.
emotions. There's too many
Know
emotions
that
with
you're not,
people.
yeah, totally. And know this, you're not going to
Mm,
be happy. You're not going to be happy all the
sure.
time. And very few people get divorced and can say that they were absolutely happy with the outcome. I mean, listen, think about it. Most of the time, there's nothing good about it.
Mhm.
Now, what comes after, yes, people are happy. They made the decision. They got divorced. And we always tell people it typically gets worse before it gets better, but it does get better.
Yes.
And most of the time,
Yep.
right? And along the way, there absolutely people are going to be unhappy about certain things, but that's the reality of it. Listen, you might be seeing your kids less, and you might be paying support, and you might be paying a lawyer, and you're definitely paying a lawyer for all of that. So usually people aren't that happy when they're going through the process. But hopefully you have somebody that you trust, somebody that you can work with, communicate openly and freely with, and come up with a plan. And a lot of times, speaking of plan, I have a lot of clients that will ask me, well, what's your plan? And I don't know sometimes. I tell them, listen, the plan could be fluid. It's like when I represent an engineer client or somebody with a science background or a math background, they want to know exactly the exactly what the plan is. I go, listen, I could tell you the typical process. I could tell you, and run through that with you. But plans change. Sometimes we start a trial and plans change. Everything changes because in divorce, there's nothing really black and white. At the end of the day, if you want a divorce, you're going to get divorced. And it's going to be what the court believes to be an equitable division of property. And it's going to be what the court believes to be in the best interest of your children.
Right.
And obviously, you can agree to anything else. But again, the important thing with that to keep in mind is you need to be confident and happy with, I don't know if it's about to say happy because I did say, it's hard to be happy, but you need to be confident and trusting in your lawyer to help guide you through that. And your lawyer should be communicating with you and giving you different options and giving you different scenarios and examples so you make an educated decision.
Right. So getting back to like the kids and the school and all that, is there still a 100-mile rule? I know you've had cases probably in the past where maybe one parent wants to move to be closer to family, and now they need some help with childcare. So, maybe staying in that location no longer serves them and they do need to go somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, typically, if somebody wants to move, especially the one who the kids primarily reside with and where the kid's school is, yes, either you have to have permission from the other parent or you got to go to court and get the court to, have a hearing on it and determine what's in the best interest and if you can move or not. And same with school. And this is assuming you have joint legal custody. So joint legal custody covers things such as schools, medical decisions, things like that, religion, different types of, I won't say that others aren't important, but those type of fundamental issues and decisions regarding your child. And so school, yes, if you have joint legal custody, you both have to agree. And if you can't agree, then the judge is going to decide for you.
Does it make, I mean, this is probably a silly question, but it makes sense to me that you would probably want to work that out before the divorce and having to go back, correct?
Well, I don't want to say before the divorce, but during the
Right.
divorce.
Before it's done.
Because a lot of times you don't really know before and things change. But yeah. And so what we like to do is kind of anticipate, if your kids are really young, we like to anticipate what could happen in the future and how to deal with it. Because unfortunately, we get a lot of people that call us, a lot of times that say, listen, my kids are getting ready to start school now. We're fighting over school district. And they end up spending more money sometimes than what their whole entire divorce costs arguing over school district. And if there had been something in there, and sometimes like we did a divorce recently with a young infant, and the parents were in no place to even think about school. They had no clue where they're going to live yet. All they knew is that they wanted to be divorced. And so they said they both said, we'll deal with it later, knowing that it could cost them a lot of money. A lot of times what we build in there is how we're going to deal with it. Okay. If it's not this school, then it's that school. Or we might say, before filing a motion, both parents are going to go to the mediator, whether it's the mediator to help settle the case or another mediator, a designated mediator, or that they're going to mutually agree or each submit 3 names or whatever it may be. but they might go to a mediator first to attempt to resolve that, as opposed to filing a motion with the court and running through a hearing. It might end up that way if they don't agree, but there's certain things to do. Also, with, I know we're diverting a little from the real estate, but schools kind of apply to that. But getting into other things for the future, like for example, sports, extracurriculars, who's going to pay for it? How is that going to be handled? All of that is stuff that we like to build in if possible. Now, it's not possible in every scenario, but if possible, we do. But yeah, also with a house, is there an advantage to keeping the house and it's in the school district where your kids currently attend? I mean, typically I would say yes, unless you're able to buy another house in the same school district. So it just depends. Or if the other parent is, for example, sometimes one parent wants to move out of the school district, but they want their kids to stay in the same school district. So it might make sense for the other parent to buy a house in that same school district. So it all depends. Every situation is different.
Right. Can you think of something?
The important thing, though, is, sorry, real quick, is don't make these decisions without consulting with your lawyer. Don't just wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to sell the house, or you know what, I'm going to go buy a house. Because if it's not done right, it could come back to bite you in the butt, or might end up costing a lot more money to either ratify the solution or have to change it.
So I like how you keep saying it could come back to bite you in the butt. What, of course, you can't give us details, but can you give us a scenario of something that you've experienced where something did come back to bite someone? And like a beware kind of situation.
Yeah, I've had a situation where somebody bought a house and then realized that the other parent was not planning on keeping the marital home. And then guess what? They couldn't afford another one in the same school district. And then they had a problem there if their kids went to public schools. I've had a situation where somebody's bought property where they've given cash to somebody else to go buy property in their name for them and then transfer it and had some side deal, and they've gotten in trouble for it. And, usually it costs them financially. But there's all different types of scenarios. The best thing is be honest with your lawyer and don't make any irrational decisions. It's way easier to say than to actually do, because I understand that going through divorce is extremely emotional. It's probably one of the worst things, if not the worst thing you go through in your life, especially if you have children. But don't make decisions based on emotion.
So going in, I'm glad you mentioned that, because here's what I wanted to talk about next. I think I mentioned earlier, as a woman, I talk to a lot of women that are going through divorce. And again, they seem to be a little bit more emotional when it comes to the kids and staying in the same home and not wanting to leave, keep everything, status quo, if you will. But sometimes we take a look at things like, she wants to keep the house, let's say, and they have other assets, like they have other financial accounts. And, I'm assuming you have somebody that you refer this out to potentially, but I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about how not all assets are equal. Like if I went to a house and let's say the house is worth $750 right now, and let's say there's an IRA that's worth $750. Well, that IRA is going to grow at a different trajectory. The house couldn't, we know real estate, right, goes up and down. So I think too, being able to have that financial conversation and say, let's take a look at these assets because they're not equal always.
Correct. And we also have, we consult with litigation assistants or which are typically accountants, CPAs, financial experts, or we have our client consult with them and to find out, what's because for example, if you're right, you don't just take a line down the middle and divide everything. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And sometimes you do go split every single account and every single piece of real estate. Other times you're just shifting stuff from one column to other to get the bottom line to equal out. And that's typically what's done actually. But what's happening also is, you need a financial expert to really figure out what the true value is of everything. Obviously, we have appraisers for real estate, commercial appraisers, real estate appraisers. Sometimes people they insist they know the value on their own or whatever, but typically we almost always recommend hiring appraisers also regarding that. But as far as all these other accounts and retirement accounts and whatever, usually your lawyer, as you consult with a tax professional, an accountant, a financial expert, somebody's going to be able to come in and look, okay, what's the value? What's the real value of this? What are the penalties? What are the implications? How much money are you really getting out of this. But you're totally right. For example, if there's a mortgage on that $750,000 house, but that mortgage could be paid off with other assets, yes. So you might be cash poor then, but that's a decision you have to make. Can you afford then your house is paid for? How can you afford the taxes, the insurance, the utilities, the upkeep of the house? So it's looking at that, not just necessarily looking at, can you afford the house payment? Or you want to roll the money into a retirement account and go get a smaller place or rent a place for a while.
Right.
So that all depends. But yeah, you could definitely offset from one asset to another if there's one you absolutely want. And I've had some people tell me, I've had stay-at-home moms say, the most important thing to me is a house. And I tell them, please consult. Usually after they consult with the financial experts, they realize it might not be the smartest thing to do.
Right.
And other times, I've had some where family members have helped them be able to keep the marital home and they want to keep that stability. And other people are like, you know what, I don't want the memories of it. I don't want it. Or other people are like, why do I need to, have no money other than the house? We need money to live on in case of emergencies. So
Exactly. And, that's the conversation. Well, if your kids are first, which of course they are, that's what their goal is, to keep everything stable. It's like, think about, like, I sell homes, obviously. So I've always wanted everyone to buy and sell homes. But, you're looking at an asset that's a depreciating asset.
But you know what? Something about you, Holly, and I've known you for a while now, and I know we know each other also professionally, and we had a podcast show together, and I know several people that you bought represented in real estate transactions. And what I do know about you is when you say, I want people to buy and sell homes, that you're not one of those realtors that is just going to do a deal to make a deal. You actually take the time to get to know them, and you tell them, because there's been several people that have been your clients that have called me and said, hey, either that are going through a divorce that maybe didn't get the sound advice from their attorney or didn't get any advice, or people that are thinking about going through a divorce that you told, hey, call a divorce attorney and find out if you're making the right decision or not. And sometimes I've had to call you and tell you, listen, I don't think they should sell the house right now, or I don't think they should buy the house right now. And you're okay with that. And I think that's what leads to long-term good relationships in business for you, because you're honest with people and you respect the opinions and advice that professionals or other professionals in other areas are going to give to your clients.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And it's the truth, right? We're both in a relationship business. We do want to see the best for our clients. We want to obviously, have people feel good about us so we can stay in business, but it is relationship. And you're exactly right. I love working with you, and you've always been beyond generous to talk to people and give them, the good, bad, the ugly of what their situation looks like, and help them with those decisions as well. And I think that's why we have worked so well together, just because we're both the same in that way. Because it is, we want to see divorce is ugly. I don't care how well the people get along. It's still not a fun process,
Totally. And I tell people from the beginning when they meet with me, listen, have you tried counseling? Have you tried therapy? Have you really tried? What about trying with somebody else? Is there anything you could do to try to save your marriage? Maybe you should go on a vacation for the weekend without the children, or whatever it may be. And I tell them, think about it, unless it's an emergency situation or situation where there's abuse or something like that. Sometimes circumstances are different. But typically, especially if they have kids, tell them, think about it. Don't hire me right now. They'll be ready to write a check or give their credit card. No, think about it. And I also let them know it's very, very expensive. And I think a lot of lawyers aren't necessarily upfront and realistic with their clients about how expensive it really is. And especially if you want a thorough and complete job done. And it's not to deter people from getting divorced at all, but know that you're going to go through a lot of this stuff. And listen, in a lot of situations, divorce is probably the right thing to do. But at the same time, even though, like what I said about you and you said about me, just because we're in the divorce business, we're not, it's not fun, right? And it's not fun to, when people are going through this. And we would rather, be able to sleep better at night knowing a family did the right thing for that family, or that parent did the right thing for that family. And if it means divorce, then it means divorce. Yeah, and they're giving us business. Otherwise, I definitely turn away more prospective clients than I do actually take the clients, because I want to make sure it's that one, they've made a sound, educated decision, and that they fully understand what's going on and that it's going to be a good fit and that we're going to be able to work together.
Yes. And also, I know for me, I don't know anyone, now I'm sure there is someone that has done this, just wakes up and says, I'm going to get divorced. I think the last statistic I saw said that the average person before they file has thought about it for about 3 years. And I know that was probably true for me. And I know of people who will go and sit down with an attorney, have a consultation, and they're like, okay, I'm not going to do it. And they'll have it. Do you feel like, have you found that? Have you found that people are typically thinking about it for a while? Maybe that's more
Yeah,
female
listen,
versus male. I don't know. Do they come and talk to you
I
and then they
mean,
don't do it and then they come back and then you're like,
yeah, totally.
could you give them something to
Totally.
think about? So that's actually a good thing. If they keep coming back and they're like, you know what? No, I've really considered everything, Jeff, and it's time. I can't,
You
just that's
know,
the thing.
totally. Sometimes people, decide to stay married and live separate lives. Sometimes people decide that they're going to try to work it out and that it's not worth going through this. Sometimes people stay together till their kids get older. And I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. Sometimes people say right away, or I hear a lot of divorce lawyers like, oh, you need to be happy, focus on yourself right away. Well, yeah, that's part of it, because how are you going to take care of your family and be a good, if you're not happy yourself?
Right.
But at the same time, so that's a reason maybe to do it. But at the same time, that's not for everybody. And it may not be the right time. And yeah, I've had people that have called me, may call once a year, once every couple of years, and then several years later, they're ready for a divorce.
Right.
And you're right. Sometimes people do wake up and say they want a divorce right away. And those are usually the ones that are going to change their mind several times along the way.
Yeah, that happens
But
too, right? They put
sometimes,
it on hold or
yeah,
they decide not to do it. They don't go through with it.
and then dismiss and then refile,
Yeah.
totally. But then there's other people who have, like you said, thought about it for a while, have consulted with a lot of people and decided to do it. And there's other times people have thought about it, not necessarily consulted a lot of people, but they call that first attorney and they feel comfortable with that first attorney. They make the decision. And sometimes it's the best decision they ever made.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot to it. There's absolutely no doubt about it. There's a lot to it. I mean, not just with real estate, but especially if you have kids. I feel like if you don't have underage kids, it's probably a much cleaner break. You're not worried about things
Uh-huh.
like you probably would just sell, sell the home, sell the things. And, for me, I look at it like if there aren't children, it's because, especially if homes are, if they're, one thing we didn't mention is if it's a high time to sell, great, sell the house, you know,
Hmm.
if they want to keep it, things like you mentioned the rate early on. And right now the rate is higher than it was. I mean, everyone pretty much refinanced back in 2020, 2021. We were around 3%.
Yeah.
So now we're looking at, here we are, January of 2025. At the time of this taping, we're at about 7 1/8, 7 1/4, and they're talking about bringing it down. But yes, I mean, I'm hoping and I'm assuming, and I think we discussed this before, because like you said, we have done the podcast. We've talked about so many different things.
Uh-huh.
But like I would be looking like, let's say I'm your client, I'm coming to you, okay? And let's say, I would like to keep the home. But I don't want to have to do the cash out refi right now because I have this 3%. Would there be a way to work it out so that I could, put in the court order, let's say, okay, she gets 6 months or she gets, is it X amount of time, or can we just wait till the market, changes? Do I only get a certain period of time? Or they're like, nope, you've got to do it right now at the rate that it's at. Do they get lenient with that? How does that work in that type of situation where
Okay.
financially it's kind of a
Yeah.
tough
I
thing?
have a lot of experience with that. So here's the thing. Before rates jump, historically, people would say, okay, you got to refinance within 30 days or 60
Mhm.
days or whatever it may be. That's unrealistic. Even if rates are the same, it takes, it
Yeah.
typically could take longer than that to get a mortgage, right? Especially for somebody that hasn't tried yet. And especially if it's somebody who, initially when you got the mortgage, it might have been because of the combined household income or your spouse's
Right.
income and not yours. So you got to find out first on that. But what I always used to do is I would push for, and listen, no matter which side I'm on, I want to be realistic, right? If I represent, let's say, husband in that case who's leaving the house and doesn't want to stay on a mortgage, I also would tell him, listen, 30 days, even 60 days may be unrealistic. Maybe we want to do 90 days and then offer some sort of grace period if they could show they've been making reasonable efforts to be able to obtain a mortgage, and they get another 30-day extension or something like that. Or it goes back to the mediator could become the arbitrator on that issue. So that way you're not just throwing the family out and selling it right away. But so there's different situations, right? But at the same time, I wouldn't want his name to be on that mortgage forever or for several years, because that could greatly negatively impact the ability to be able to get financing on something else. Now, that being said, we have done a few deals recently with higher mortgage rates where somebody doesn't care, or I don't say doesn't care, but it had little to no effect on their purchasing ability if the property is still in their name. So I've seen as much as 2 years given to be able to refinance in certain situations.
Okay.
So yes, is it possible? Totally. But I don't know that anybody's going to force anybody to do it, but it's going to be if they agree. I mean, a court probably could force it, but I haven't seen them really force that long a period of time. And it depends on everybody's financial situation. If you own 12 homes all across the country and you're marketable, or if you've got $10 million in liquid and bank accounts, it might be a different situation.
Sure.
But if you're like the average American that's working, earning a paycheck and paying your mortgage, paying your bills, it's going to be tough to be able to stay on the mortgage for an extended period of time.
And that's why I feel for people who are going through it when it's a time like now where, although the house prices are higher and they're going to continue to do that, which I won't bore you with all those details today, but the rate where it's at, it does make it a challenge to be able to buy out the other spouse when they determine what that amount would be. And you've got to do that, cash out refi so you can buy them out if you're keeping the home. So more than likely, unless what you said, people have just a lot of extra money and it's okay. They can wait to get their, piece of the home, wait for it to be sold. Most of the time, that's what I find too, that, it does have to be sold. And then,
yeah, we don't want to set people up for failure, and we don't want a family out on the street. So you got to be realistic no matter what side you're on, whether you're representing the side that wants to keep the house or the other side, and come up with a realistic plan and how it's going to be dealt with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So a little bit of switch gears just for a second. I know you are such a well-rounded.
Speaking of switch gears, have you seen, sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
Well, no, it's not called switching gears. I think shifting gears. Tim Allen has a new show. I think it's on Hulu.
Yeah.
And I don't watch hardly any TV at all, but it's kind of cool. It's called, I think, Shifting Gears. Anyway, when you said switching gears, I just thought of it. And apparently I saw something the other day, I think on Facebook or Instagram, it says it's like the highest streamed sitcom or something like that now, or the most viewed, most watched already.
On Hulu.
I think the third episode just came out yesterday.
Check it out.
I don't know if it's on any other platforms, but the only thing I have is Hulu.
No,
and I rarely ever watch TV. I think I was putting on Sports Center, ESPN or something, to watch a replay of one of the games. And I saw it pop up as suggested for you on Hulu. And so anyway, when you said switching gears, I saw this news come out about it yesterday too. So,
well, there we go. We'll have to check that out. We'll have to take that recommendation. I know we don't have a lot of time for TV.
Tim Allen fixes or restores cars in this business. And then his daughter and her children come in to live with him. And so that's, just very big stuff.
So it's like that intergenerational, that's the multi-generational thing that we've got going lately.
Yeah. Anyways. Okay. So sorry
that's okay. These are
cut you off and distract you. But when you said switching gears, that's what it got me thinking of. So let's switch gears. What's up? What do you want to talk about?
I'm just, I know how well-rounded you are, and we're having a really serious talk because it's a serious conversation, divorce and, and what's going to happen. Where people live it's huge. It's like at the hierarchy of needs, it's at the top. It's like air, water, and food, shelter. It's important.
Yes.
But I know how well-rounded you are, and I know that you've got your hand in a lot of different things, and you're very community-based. You're actually the Oakland County representative on the Detroit Regional Convention Facility Authority Board. Now, I've known you, and I know you do that, but I'd like to get more information. I don't even really know what that totally entails, but I know there's a lot going on in Detroit.
Yeah, it's actually at a board meeting. At a board meeting this morning, and that's why I'm actually where I'm at now is the Detroit Club, which is close to the convention center. And so I came here to be able to do this recording with you. But it's so formerly called Cobo Hall, Huntington Place, where the auto show is, and the convention center in Detroit. There's an authority that was established think in 2009, maybe. So there's 5 directors on the board, and one is appointed by the governor, one's appointed by the mayor of the city of Detroit, one is appointed by the Oakland County Executive, one's appointed by the Macomb County Executive, and one's appointed by the Wayne County Executive. I'm appointed by our Oakland County Executive, Dave Coulter. And any decisions have to be unanimous. And we have board meetings typically once a month is the main board meeting, the public open board meeting. And then we have subcommittee meetings either every week or every other week. And we make decisions regarding the convention center. And there's a lot of exciting things going on now, such as the addition of a public-private partnership for a JW Marriott 5-star hotel that's going to be added in the old Joe Louis Arena site. We're working on some renovations, some possible new construction projects, and it's exciting. And our job is to make sure that taxpayer money is being used wisely for this, how we're going to manage this convention center. And it's a unpaid, free, basically full-time job. And when Dave first appointed me to it, I said, listen, I'm really busy with my law practice. How much time is this going to take up? I think he tells me at the time, a few hours a month. And it turned into way more time than that.
Of course.
But I gotta tell you, I enjoy it, and you feel like it's nice to be there and feel like you're doing the right thing, and also see all the exciting things with the city of Detroit. It's no secret to most that there's a huge shortage of hotels in Detroit, so we're working, and we've already made efforts to do that with some private partners, and we're also trying to see what else we could do to help the city, and especially as the city's thriving right now. And a lot of national shows that used to be in other cities are now being more attractive to Detroit. And the way to attract more of them would be with more hotel rooms, because that's usually people's biggest hesitation. Before it was, Detroit, I'm not sure. Well, when they come and check out Detroit, even since the NFL draft, who Claude Molinari, who represents the state of Michigan on the board with me and is also CEO of Visit Detroit, and then Alexis Wiley, who represents Wayne County, city of Detroit on the board with me as well. They were very involved in the NFL draft and bringing it here to Detroit and being involved in it. But since that, a lot of people came in. I think it was record attendance at this NFL draft, of any NFL draft. Everybody that came in and saw the city, I heard something the other day that several of those people came back and brought their families to come and see the city. And even this morning, my board meeting, I heard somebody talking about how his children had came down last week for there was a Pistons game. And then there was, I believe, it was the auto show at Huntington Place, and then the Lions game, and they live in the suburbs, and how their kids spent all day in the city and had a blast. And so anyway, it's fun time to be on this board and to be part of this as the city's growing, thriving, and hopefully a lot more new, exciting things coming, which is ultimately helping the residents of the city and the residents of the state. A lot more jobs and a lot more entertainment for people. A lot more things to do with your family, and it's absolutely wonderful.
It really is. And I remember back in 2023, I think it was Forbes, because I remember posting about it, said Detroit's the market to watch, and for 2024. And we just got the numbers in, and I'm actually licensed down in Florida as well, as a broker down in Florida. And so it's interesting because it was a Florida-based email coming from their entity that basically was talking about the Tampa area and how, all this excitement that's going on and all this growth.
Yeah.
So they gave, in this article, the top 10 large, medium, and small cities across the country who had the most growth. Well, Tampa was number 2 for large cities. Detroit was number 1. 200
Was it really? Wow.
203% growth year over year from 2023 to 2024. We were number 1. Yeah. So
that's incredible. Wow, I didn't know that.
It's huge. I did a reel on it and everything, because I was like, we need to talk about this. It's something to be proud of. We've had a lot of negativity in our city. We've had a lot of financial situations that we have dug ourselves out of a huge hole.
It really seems like it was turned around. And I mean, the new residences in the city of Detroit are absolutely incredible.
They are.
At least the ones, at least downtown. And I know that there's a big effort and push to spread outside of downtown and through the rest of the city. And that's what we'd like to see.
It's starting. I've been showing some houses out in some of the suburb areas, and the investors are coming in. There's certain blocks that you can see they've totally flipped. And then it's interesting because the rest of the street, the rest of the block, you'll notice doesn't look flipped yet. But when the investors start to come in, because I've been talking with buyers and with the people that are doing it, when the investors start to come in, they have a plan to do that. You know that that's going to happen. So it's a great opportunity to get in to those homes as the prices are starting to rise. So taxes
Yeah.
aren't the
Yeah.
best. I
Yeah.
will say the property taxes are a little high down there. But depending maybe not for you, maybe not coming from the Birmingham. Birmingham's probably still a little higher than Detroit. But Detroit taxes are, a little bit, they're a little higher than what people would expect. But they're definitely doing a lot with that infrastructure. So I'm excited about it too. I'm glad that you're part of that board, to know that people like you are giving their time, talent, and effort to really see some positive changes in the city. And like you said, watch the spending. That's important. I'm glad that there's a
Yeah.
conglomerate of you coming together to be like a checkpoint for that.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, but it's
Yeah.
fun. So,
Well, good. Okay, so if somebody needs to find you, I know you do the divorce, but you've got the personal injury and the criminal, so you're very well rounded in your law firm as well. What's the best way for people to reach you?
either email me or call me. Office number is 248-549-0000. It's the Abood Law Firm. We have several locations, but I work primarily out of the Birmingham, Michigan office. So that's the phone number. Email address is jeff@aboodlaw.com, ABOOD.
Okay, and they can just contact you and sit down and have a consultation and basically.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Feel free to call me anytime.
okay,
Yep.
good.
And if they know you and they shoot you a message, feel free to give them my cell phone number as well.
Okay, I absolutely will. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put that information at the end of the podcast. It will be down below in YouTube. Reach out to Jeff for any legal issues that you have. And I just want to thank you again. I know that you are busy and nailing this time down. I know that you really had to move some things out of the way.
All
So I
right.
appreciate it.
I can probably had you waiting a couple hours on me today. My board meeting went a little bit longer this
Okay.
morning.
I
And
had stuff to keep me busy. It was good.
well,
This has been a
all right,
great
good.
conversation. Thanks again for all the expertise. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Onward and Upward show today. So glad that you were here. Would love for you to tap that bell for notifications so that you'll know every time we post a new podcast. And we will see you next time.